what I want to do today is briefly go over penal infrastructure strategies that different governments are using across the country to push forward their prison agendas. I want to talk a bit about the role of marketing and taglines and their role in selling prison expansion to Canadians. And then the third part of the presentation, what I want to show you is compare some text from press releases and show you emails and background documents that were used to prepare these press releases, to show you how contrived and manufactured these messages are and almost made up for the most part. So when, for instance, Gordon O'Connor walked in to Kingston a few days ago and said, yeah, there's going to be jobs as a result of this project, does he have any proof that this is the case? So we'll talk about that a bit, and then I know the purpose of the meeting, a lot of you are interested in mobilizing against prison expansion in Kingston and the broader program that the Detention Service of Canada is pushing forward right now. So we'll talk a bit about different ideas that you can use to contest what I call penal common sense. But of course, there's more people here that are plugged into the ground and what's going on, and I'll be all ears and try and learn as much as I can as well. Okay, so just to give a bit of a crash course of the different phases of penal infrastructure initiatives. There's 5 that other authors and myself have identified through doing research. The first has been called, I mean, these aren't fancy names, but the first is called preliminary planning. So this usually involves a needs assessment where prison officials identify gaps in existing infrastructure or are told to find gaps in existing infrastructure and capacity that are deemed to require the construction of new facilities. From there, usually the operational framework of these facilities is developed, including what the institutional objectives should be, what kind of governance should be put in place in these institutions, programming and staffing requirements. And then based on these details, the infrastructure is designed, usually by a private firm on a contract basis. And then from there it goes into the second phase, the site selection phase of these projects, which often involves the creation of a short list of sites, either government-owned or for sale. So they conduct those type of studies. And for sites that aren't located on the grounds of existing penal institutions, this is the phase where you'll see geotechnical and environmental assessments being undertaken to determine whether or not they can accommodate the construction of these facilities. And then the site assessments usually take into consideration the organization's operational goals in terms of cost efficiency and security and that kind of thing. And then once that's ranked, the negotiation phase starts. And basically this is where you see the selection of the site and then all the contracts go out. So if you're interested in seeing the contracts that are being rolled out for these institutions in your backyard, you can go to mercs.ca and then look for prison construction in their search engine, and that's where all the government contracts are. You can find everything that CSE contracts out to private firms on that. And then from there, implementation is pretty straightforward. It's building the facility, and then operations, operating the facility. Now, there's different ways that governments go about these 5 phases of infrastructure planning. There's an open approach, which basically involves when authorities try to involve the public at all phases of the project. So in the Yukon, when they decided that they were going to do their corrections renewal, what they did was they had a corrections consultation. So for 14 months between 2004 and 2006, they conducted 160 meetings across the territory to basically find out from constituents what type of prison system they should build, what should be the objectives of the system, what kind of programs should be available, and what kind of facility they should build. And from there, they took the recommendations of this consultation and put forward their plan for the new Yukon Correctional Center, and they pretty much post all the updates on the website. And this is what I would call an open approach. It's trying to involve the public as much as possible in these different phases of the project. Then there's the closed approach. This involves the minimal communication of information and no opportunities for the provision of feedback that can have a tangible impact on the outcome of projects. So this is often used just to expedite the implementation of projects. You know, if you don't go and talk to the communities that are going to be affected and you just stick a shovel in the ground and say, hey, it's going forward, take me to court, it may expedite the process unless the court disagrees with what you're doing. So the government of New Brunswick is one jurisdiction that adopted this closed approach by not informing or involving their constituents in any phase of the project. And when they made the first announcement, this picture's from October 2009, but when they made the first announcement in May 2009 in Shediac, residents from Shediac were shocked. They had no idea that their town was chosen for a new remand center in their communities. And when they went to the mayor and complained about the fact that they were completely shut out from the process, the mayor of Shediac responded as follows: "The danger for me is that maybe the people who are more vocal would have came in and started yelling, and we would have lost the project. I couldn't risk this. I couldn't risk losing such a good project for Shediac, and that's why I didn't consult. Council is elected to represent the views of its citizens. There were discussions in the municipal council with the municipal council prior to purchasing the land." So apparently, so-called carceral stimulus and concern for jobs associated with these facilities overrides democratic representation in this particular approach to penal infrastructure development. Another type of prison expansion approach is called predesignation. Predesignation essentially is building new facilities or new units on the grounds of existing facilities. So this is what we're seeing here in Kingston. And the reason that governments do this, and I'm just like using their rationale to explain why they're doing this, it essentially removes the need to consult local communities because they're basically built on land that's designated for prison use. They have to acquire, at most, permits for building, but they don't need permits to rezone the land and do all that other business and go through consultation with communities. They bypass that entire project. And right now, the $1.1 billion or $593 million, depending on which figures of the government you want to pay attention to, in Ontario, Toronto South Detention Centre is being built on that model at the grounds of the Mimico Correctional Centre. So right now, actually, there was a story in the Toronto Sun this week where residents in Etobicoke realized that they had this big, giant facility, 1,650 beds emerging in their neighborhood, and we're like, oh, now we're going to cause a fuss about it. It's a bit late in the game, sadly, I think, for that. I doubt that project is going to get moved, but there are opportunities in Kingston. So, as you know, Minister Taves was in town. I don't think they sent the media advisory out till the morning of the event, probably to avoid many of you protesting. So he made an announcement for new units at Bath, Collins Bay, and Middlehaven Institution in October. Mr. O'Connor came in January, or this past week actually, for new units at Pittsburgh and Frontenac. And anyways, as the government establishes the near equivalent of a new federal penitentiary in Kingston, one must ask why constituents have yet to have an opportunity to weigh in on whether or not they want basically another such institution in their backyard. Big Taves has said that the reason they haven't consulted communities is, again, this is from an order of paper question answer from public safety critic from the Liberal Party, Mark Holland. He said, since the announced institutional expansions will be occurring within the existing perimeters on CSE-owned land, in-depth consultation with surrounding communities was not undertaken. The government didn't feel the need to consult you in this particular case. I believe that any campaign that aims to oppose or at least have a role in the establishment of new penal institutions should focus first on this asset, or this aspect of our democratic deficit in this country, and demand transparency and a voice. If there are individuals here who support prison expansion in Kingston, you probably don't support the way it's being done. So I think a discussion about transparency on this matter and others is very much needed.